valley starting to die.
Easy.
Please!
Holy shit.
Help!
Are we gonna help him?
Put your seatbelt on, Ellie.
Well, what about the guy?
He ain't even hurt.
Alone and forsaken by fate and by man. Oh Lord, if you hear me, please take my hand. Hope
you Welcome to Wide Flank.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. Another episode of Wide Flank Game Club. We're the famous podcasters, Teddy, Alon, and Danny. We for this game club we played The Last of Us, a classic. Some might say the Citizen Kane of video games, but not me. And it was great. We loved it. Danny, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Last of Us?
Sure.
You know, do the dictionary definition of the game.
Exactly.
Merriam-Webster defines The Last of Us as...
Let's define our terms before we get started.
Yes.
This discussion. So The Last of Us was released for the PlayStation 3 in 2013, which I can't believe that was 8 years ago. It was developed by Naughty Dog. It's a PlayStation exclusive, as are all their titles. It's their fourth main series. So they've also done Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, Uncharted, and The Last of Us. Those are their main IPs, I would say. It's directed by Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley. And the game was maybe the most acclaimed video game ever released. It won triple-digit numbers of Game of the Year awards from many places you've never heard of, and probably don't exist. Most of the praise was really focused on its story, voice acting, graphics, and it's widely covered in any conversation or article or paper about video games as art, for many of those reasons. And it spawned a huge fan base. A sequel came out to the game last year in 2020. And there's even an HBO series that's in production right now that the game's director is co-producing. And it stars many famous people, but that you've all heard of.
Sounds fucking great.
I love famous people.
Pedro Pascal is playing Joel. That's all you really need to know.
Okay, cool.
And I don't know her name, but the girl who plays Lady Mormont in Game of Thrones is playing Ellie.
Sick.
And we all played the PlayStation 4 remaster, which came out about 1 year after this game, after the original game, which this was kind of the last game that came out for PS3. It kind of concluded the generation. It was very clear that Naughty Dog was developing it for PlayStation 4 at the same time.
Yeah, also, this is like a general disclaimer. I played this streaming, the original streaming on PlayStation Now, like the PS3 version, and it still looked great, but I have to say PlayStation Now is a terrible service if you're going to just stream games, so don't do it. Don't fall into that trap. Maybe if you can download it to your console, it's worth it, but I couldn't because it's a PS3 game and you can't download PS3 games to your console, so be warned. So yeah, you guys want to start with the opening?
Yeah, can we just start with the opening, because it's the opening and it's so good. It's such an incredible piece of story and piece of cinematic experience that just like launches you into the world immediately. It's pre-credits. It introduces you to all the main characters for, until you meet the next main character. And it does such a good job of like immersing you in, pulling you in story-wise, immersing you in through characters and ambiguity. It lets you sort of look around and learn as much as you can about the story without ever really telling you what's happening. You don't actually ever know until later in the game what's really happening. but you can infer all of this stuff by walking around as Sarah, Joel's daughter, just a young girl walking around the house, and there's all this like chaos and like explosions, and you hear like a dog get murdered, and then the neighbor comes in and he's all fucked up and sick and like maybe a zombie, but you don't know what's going on, and your dad shoots him, and there's just like so much action. It's really an action movie start. Like you're immediately just in there with a little bit of cutscene. And yeah, I told you guys at the time when we did like our little like Patreon part 1 recording, my mouth was open the whole time. I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty hard to have an opening that resonates so well that is chock full of that much action, which I think is a testament to how strong it is. You really get a sense for the world that you're going to be in for the next 15 hours.
The next 20 years.
Yeah. And you get some good foreshadowing, and you get a good depiction of who Joel is as a character.
Yep.
This very passionate father, and also someone who looks out for him and his tribe, and that's it. You drive. It really wasn't until the most recent playthrough that I paid attention to the fact that you drive past that family with a kid, and Joel is the one who tells Tommy to keep driving. And that definitely foreshadows much about Joel.
See what they need. What do you think you're doing? Keep driving.
I got a kid, Joel.
So do we.
But we have room.
Keep driving, Tommy. You see what I see. Someone else will come along.
You should have helped him.
Yeah, I think I said I didn't have a lot to say, but I now I do about the opening. I think the opening does a good job of probably showing the tensions that we kind of have, and that a lot of people have with modern cinematic games. But it's both. Its strongest parts are both its characterization and storytelling through cinematics, and also through you as the player, even though it's not quite cinematic, you as the player like walking around the house, looking at all the posters on the wall of Sarah's room, of just like noticing things on the fridge like that are taped up. It's like full of detail, and that you as a player are able to explore and investigate in a way that like the opening cinematic of a Final Fantasy game, while still being cinematic, doesn't quite have that that opportunity for you to. It is not a game. It is not interactive, right? It is just like the opening movie of what's going to be a completely separate experience. And this kind of oscillates between those two things in ways that I think are, highlight the potential, like the heights that are capable of both like semi-interactive and movie experiences adjacent to games.
It sort of reminds me of like game trailers, not like the game not living up to game trailers usually is the case, right? Like you see the game trailer for like Assassin's Creed, you're like, oh my God, this is the sickest game ever. Like I can do anything, like you get that sort of feeling, but the gameplay doesn't feel like that really. But in this game, very notably to me, like they're still called cutscenes, I guess, but there's no cuts. You have like an opening movie essentially with the daughter Sarah and Joel and their interaction, and then you kind of you see Sarah wake up, and then you're Sarah immediately. There's no break. There's no change in the graphics or how anything looks or feels. And like it's funny because I just watched a friend play it last night, but I did the same thing as him, which I didn't move for like a minute because I was waiting for the cutscene to keep going. It's like, what the fuck is she doing? Like she's just like standing at the end of her bed, like scratching her head, looking in the mirror. And I was like, what is this? And then I was like, oh, and you like step forward, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in. I didn't realize I'm in, and it's so fucking dense. Like they put so much work into making a real world. It's like, you know, when you shoot a movie, obviously there's tons of work and you know, costume and everything and scenes and all that stuff, but you're still like in a building that exists. Like, you know, like you're in like a house. You don't need to like make a house. And they made a realistic house, and everything feels really real. And it's like, I think we've mentioned this on probably every game club, but there's that invisible hand feeling that we talked about a lot in Half-Life 2, where you're walking and kind of feeling like you don't know where you are, where you're going, but you're doing exactly what they want you to do, and you're doing exactly what they expect you to do the whole time.
Yeah. It's so you wake up as Sarah. Should we
Yeah, I think we should paint the picture, yeah.
Yeah, paint the picture. So you wake up as Sarah. Joel shoots the neighbor, as Alon said. Turns out he's a zombie.
Yeah.
Zombie apocalypse is just descending upon America, and I assume the whole world, though I don't think that's ever addressed. And basically Joel's at the very end, Joel is shot by a guard who's like quarantining the city and kills his daughter, Sarah, in a
the end of the end of the opening, not the end of the
prologue.
Game. Yeah,
the end of the game. Okay. Yeah, just want to spoiler cast for you. So yeah, I mean, the whole game's going to be spoiled, but we're definitely spoiling the opening. Sorry. We're going to spoil everything, not just like it's going to be horrible. It's going to be just an absolute bloodbath.
We won't spoil part 2 though.
Don't worry. We won't spoil part 2. And basically the game fast forwards right after Joel's daughter dies to 20 years later, where you are in post-zombie apocalypse. There are small outposts of humanity in various towns and in various small bands throughout America. And the game takes place in this space. Should we talk about Ellie? Do we need to go into all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think roughly just the sort of plot of the game is, so yeah, you're in like this, I don't know, city, I guess you could call it, but it's basically under like military rule. And
you're in Boston.
Yeah, and you're in, but yeah,
is it a city?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess you could call it a city.
One cool thing about the game for sure, though, is that it's all like in real cities and stuff like that, and that everything looks absolutely unbelievable. And if you went to college in Boston like Danny, you might recognize a lot of stuff. But yeah, basically the main gameplay and main plot of the game is a young girl, Ellie, needs to get smuggled out of the city because she's showing like immunity to the pandemic. She got bit and isn't turning into a zombie. And so you're Joel and Tess, and you basically have to get her to different locations. That's the majority of the game right there.
Yeah, it's almost like she was the subject needed to make some monoclonal antibodies in this world. Or to tie it into now, you know?
It's too real.
Right. Too soon.
I mean, it's very similar to Children of Men. To me.
Yes.
I mean,
or The Road.
Yeah, immediately that sort of parental figure, you know, doing whatever it takes to survive and protect the child with them and, you know, move along. And you know, The Road, I think, is basically just survival, right? Whereas like Children of Men, you're literally protecting the savior of humanity, and in this game you're protecting the savior of humanity.
Yeah, so I maybe we could just go chronologically a little more.
Yeah.
I think something I definitely experienced, and I've talked to a lot of people, and I think you experience, Alon, is you quickly, after this opening, you quickly start to lose steam on the game. I found the gameplay just like kind of like still like it looks impressive, but the charm or the wonder starts to wear off, and you're, you know, I don't know, like the mocap of people's facial expressions like isn't quite as shocking anymore, and you're starting to like, okay, what's going to happen now? The gameplay is before the combat leave the combat aside, like the story is about this generic dude who's taking this immune girl across the country, and they don't really have much of a relationship, and you're just like, okay, I guess I'm gonna take this like tough dude and kill a bunch of people and like go from town to town throughout America and do this. And you're kind of you're kind of like, oh, now I realize like I'm gonna play a 15-hour game where I'm just shooting people who don't matter at all to the story over and over again. And it kind of, I don't know, maybe you can describe your feeling, Alon, but to me, it's kind of like, oh, it's starting to sink in like what this game actually is, as opposed to like what like the opening cinematic might have promised. And it's like the core kernel of this game is going to be just like mindless like sneaking encounters of killing zombies and people over and over again.
Yeah, but before I say anything, I'm just curious, Danny, did you run into this as well? Because I know that Teddy and I were sort of same page on this, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I didn't feel it as strongly as you guys did. There's definitely a lull at post Boston, I feel like. A lot of Boston and then a lot of, Billstown, they both feel very gamey and not in a great way. Like I still remember, I do remember the first time I played it, the first combat scene you get into where it's the first time you walk into a combat area and you see that everything is like a level, right? Cover is just these giant rectangles. It's very Uncharted in that way. And I don't know, it definitely breaks you out of the immersion. It's like, oh, I guess this is a game again. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad way to describe it, but yeah, and I think that first, not the first chapter, but kind of the second and third chapter, Billstown and Pittsburgh, have that feeling.
Yeah, and that you touched on a lot of stuff that I definitely want to talk about and maybe revisit, but just like, why is this a game? And like, you know, why wasn't this just a movie? Why is this 15 hours? Like, all of those things are kind of questions I kept finding myself asking because of what you guys were talking about. It's like, I'm getting like ramped up. I have some shit to say, but like, you know what? It's like, it's a rinse and repeat of like, it's combat, then it's, you know, moving through an area, and then it's story, and then it's combat, and then it's scavenging, and then it's moving through an area, and then it's story. It's like, there's not much, like the opening is so special because it's sort of like everything at once, right? It's like stories happening while you're moving, and it doesn't need to, like, it's so good because they don't need to tell you anything. There's no like narration. There's no like cutscene of, you know, Joel being like, oh, Sarah, I think we have a big problem here. Like, you're just in it, and you can infer that because we're humans, and like I like take in, you know, information and make assumptions on what's happening. And then like they immediately go away from that, and it turns into like, okay, like you said, Danny, like you walk into an area and you're like, oh, I'm about to fight a bunch of people. Like, let me reload my gun because I'm definitely about to fight. Simultaneously, that takes away when you're walking through dark areas and you're like, I'm definitely not fighting here. They didn't give me any ammo, and like there's no cover. So there's no way that I'm fighting. There's no bricks on the ground for me to throw at the zombies, so I know that I'm safe. And that's just like pretty much through the whole game. And yeah, I just think the lull is really real, and I struggled to motivate myself to pick the game back up after my first time playing, like, which was like 3 hours. I played like 3 hours or something the first time, and then I struggled to pick it back up. And then you eventually do reach a sort of, I don't know if it's the final third or the second half or something, and it just becomes like amazing again, and they fall back into what they were doing so well with the opening.
Yeah, I was thinking more about this because I've talked to a few people about this. Dugan had this problem. Like Josh Josh had never finished. I'm always like, you got to pick it back up because like it's where it gets good.
Yeah.
And like, why did I want to pick it back up? And it's not because of the combat. It's not because of the little treats and Easter eggs in the game, although I think those are good. It's not because of the little notes and like flavor and density of game setting, like details and world building, even though I think those are good. It's because of the relationship that's built and developing and changing with Joel and Ellie. For personally, I don't know if you guys agree, but like I want to find out what's going to happen to these two characters. And early on, you're just kind of like, oh, I guess I want to see like how the cure for humanity pans out. Like, I guess I want to see how Joel like gets her across the country. But towards the end, it's what happens with like any story. It's like, oh, these are really well-written characters who are really going through something together and they're changing. And I want to see how that ends. And I think, Danny, you said when we were talking about this a little bit, like last week, you said, you know, you kind of have to have this lull to, like, the characters are just meeting each other, right? There's nothing that super exciting here. And I do think that's true for the story. I'm not sure that's true for gameplay. And so, like, I think what I kind of realized is like, and we probably agree to some extent, but I'm curious for feedback. Like the gameplay, the combat, I'm never like, oh, I want to come back to like have more fights. I'm really excited about this game halfway, 2/3 of the way through the game because I want to resolve the story.
Yeah, I have trouble evaluating this. I have trouble with this part of the conversation just because I've always been partial to games with lots of cutscenes. Like I grew up, like Kingdom Hearts was my first real game, I feel like, and I just loved the characters and I was loving Disney movies at the time, and so I was just happy to sit back and watch everything that was happening. And I still have that feeling when I play video games. I'm like totally down for a ton of cutscenes. I'm totally down for Metal Gear Solid 4. But I can do my best to kind of flip that switch and agree with most of the commentary there. I think
how so? Because I feel like I also think the cutscenes in this game are great, and like all the cinematic moments of the game are great. I think actually the issue that I'm landing on here is that the gameplay is kind of mediocre and
yeah, no, I guess I was kind of responding to what Alon was saying before, but more
no, man, talk about fuck Alon, just
yeah, it's just you and me, bro.
Yeah.
No, I definitely think the gameplay is definitely dated. It didn't feel great. It didn't feel amazing at the time. And it's not always as bad as it is maybe in those first areas in Boston. Like I think in the subways, the environment feels much more natural than it does in some of the open spaces. This is something that Naughty Dog definitely corrected or made a lot of progress on in Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us Part 2. But yeah, and for me, what got me through the lull, I think, was how heavy hitting those story moments were at the beginning of the game. So I'm in total agreement that what keeps you going through is not really fun, engaging gameplay loops like in Doom. It really is these powerful characters, and I don't know. I also felt like when Tess dies at the end of the first section, it's like I don't know. When Sarah dies in the prologue, I was kind of like, wow, this is a very different story from what I'm used to. This is also like early Game of Thrones era. So this is like one of two stories like this that I'd been exposed to, you know, and then Tess dies, and there's just, I think that's one of the best written scenes in the whole game is her and Joel's last conversation. That was enough for me to be like, okay, I'll keep playing this game.
You've got to get this girl to Tommy's. He used to run with this crew. He'll know where to go.
No, that was your crusade. I am not doing that.
Yes, you are. Look. There's enough here that you have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's. They're here.
Damn it.
I can buy you some time, but you have to run.
You want us to just leave you here?
Yes.
There's no way that...
I will not turn into one of those things. Come on. Make this easy for me.
I can find...
No, just go! Just fucking go.
Yeah, ironically, as someone who's like not used to playing games with cutscenes, as we talked about a lot on Metal Gear Solid, I said this to you guys, I think, last week, but I actually think there should be more cutscenes in this because the gameplay is mediocre and you don't really get anything from the majority of the gameplay, that I'd rather sit back and watch a beautiful scene because it looks amazing and the acting's amazing and the music's amazing. I would rather do that than, you know, hold forward to follow a character while they like talk to me. And then I have to press triangle for them to keep talking. I was like, why am I doing this? Like, this isn't like, a lot of me thinks, I didn't watch that making of the game thing, but a lot of the feeling that I got was like the script was almost finalized completely before the game was made. And then they just slap a bunch of game stuff on it. And are like, oh, yeah, for this part, you should control it. And for this part, you need to find a ladder. And then, like, later in the game, like, let's do the ladder thing again. That worked really well.
I think that's...
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair criticism,
Yeah.
I think. But I do think there is something about... There are these gameplay moments, and you will hear Neil Druckmann talk about it if you watch Grounded, the making of The Last of Us. That there are a lot of things that happen that are very intentional to engage you with the characters more and feel their journey more. So Ellie getting grabbed by a runner or by a human, and you saving her. There's these short exchanges, and they change as the game goes on. And I think there's something. It's obviously I imagine it's almost impossible to replicate this, but it's almost like when you go through something challenging with another person, there are all these moments where you're not talking and you're not necessarily doing anything together, but you have these moments where you run past each other again in the middle of it, even if it's like just working on a project together or something, and there's a rapport and a relationship that builds from those pieces, at least in part. And I think the amount of moments that are like that in the game where you feel like you're a part of it, where you're punching them off, Ellie is saving you from a zombie.
Yeah.
I think even when it's like you shotgun someone from stealth and Ellie's like, Jesus, Joel.
Yeah.
You know, there's like stuff like that again, this is all kind of sheen for subpar gameplay in a lot of the game. And I agree. I think there's no excuse for the grabbing a dumpster again to boost up to a high area or finding another ladder or plank.
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
I mean, that's basically what the Uncharted puzzles were like beneath the surface in a lot of ways. They're like so oversimplified, but yeah, it's just like, it's almost insulting to be given this adult story.
I think we're like vaguely agreeing because all of the parts that you're talking about are the parts that I agree are good and should exist. And everything that we're agreeing is like repetitive and or tedious and or boring. It's just like fat. Like it just felt like there's no reason I'm gaining this. Like there is no Ellie Joel dialogue in those moments. You just have to look for the palette underwater. You're just doing that again, you know. And it's just like, yeah, a lot of the gameplay was very repetitive puzzles, like we've mentioned already, and like replaying parts. Like there's not really any cost of dying, right? So I just found myself being like, wow, I'm probably never going to make a game, but how fucking annoying is it to just replay a part over and over again where everything's the same, the enemies are in the same place, and like no matter what you do or how you do it doesn't change the story or scene or timeline, and you just have to like get through it. You just have to like brute force it or learn to stealth better or something. And I don't know. It's a lot of the themes that we've talked about on other episodes where like I don't feel like I'm like skilling up, where I feel like there was room for that. You know, like when you're Ellie and you're both trying to kill the rabbit that's at Danny's background and the moose with the bow. It's like hard. And you're like, oh, fuck, I missed. Like, I have to get used to using the bow. And I feel myself getting better, and that feels good. When I just, like, get grabbed by a clicker, which are, like, really deadly zombies. I realize people don't know what clickers are, but they just, like, fucking insta-kill you, basically, if they touch you. Like, that, I'm just like, oh, God, I have to fucking do that part again. God damn it. It's not like I'm getting, like, better and, like, it's more interesting. It's just, like, fucking a pain in my ass.
Yeah, and well, this is very present in games. This kind of like mastery of an area, mastery of a certain combat encounter, repeated tries at it. And Metal Gear is a game that does this quite a bit, right? It's like you learn where everyone spawns. Yeah. Though I do think Soulsborne, there's a little more randomness to it, to each fight with an enemy, but definitely in repeating the same, that like repetition leading to mastery. But
part of that, though, in those games is the cost of dying is really high.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say that then, and this is something that I think Neil Druckmann says that they made the death animation as brutal as they could to kind of give you this sense of not wanting it to happen, which I think they do to some extent, but yeah, definitely not enough for it to come across the same way that Soulsborne does, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make me be more careful. It sort of just makes me roll my eyes. But in Metal Gear, I was like, okay, fuck. I have to actually try really hard and nail this part. I really don't want to die and go back to the vents again, because it takes a long time and it's really annoying and clunky and stuff. Or this game, I was just like, I'll try running this way. I'll try running this way. Like, do I have to kill them? Maybe I can just like lose aggro and like jump over this thing. You know, I was just like, whatever, die. Like, didn't matter.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, like, I think what ends up happening to me in this is like, I just never let a clicker get anywhere near me. Like, whatever, like, if they get close, it's like, I have to nuke them. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm using a bunch of my resources because I don't want to play this part over again. Even though, like, nothing matters. Like, you can, like, save scum. You can, like, cheese it. You can be like, okay, did I get all 4 of the enemies in this with 1 Molotov cocktail? If I don't, then I'm going to reload and do it over again. But it's like, I want to have the most cinematic experience possible. It's one of the reasons I don't play this game on the hardest difficulty, because I don't want my character, my main, like the character that has a ton of humanity, to die over and over again, because it just like takes me out of it. And so I do things like that. It's like, okay, I'm just pulling out the shotgun if there's a clicker, and I'm just going to shoot him twice if that's what it takes, because I just want to get through this part, and because not just because it's annoying, I don't want to play it again, but also because, like, I don't know, I don't want him to die, and I just want to keep going. So I think in some ways it teaches you that if you're always like, I want to play this perfectly, I mean, I think this has to do with skill as well, but like, then I think you can keep having these issues. But there were a lot of fights where I'd use a ton of resources and I would just scrape by, and that to me was great. Just keep pressing ahead. But
yeah, I guess I just wish I had more effect. I wish I wasn't a slave to the script of the game, and that my actions affected anything, because they don't. No matter how you get through a part, how much health you have, or how many resources you use, or how many times you died and replayed it, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change your interactions with Ellie. It doesn't change the story. It doesn't change where you're going next. It doesn't really make it harder. Like, there's not really like you rarely like have back-to-back hard fights and you're like, oh my God, I can't do this because I'm too low from the last fight. You know, like, you usually replenish and all that stuff. So I guess that's more what I'm saying, where I'm just like, it's just what I do sort of doesn't matter. And I'm just like servicing the script almost.
I mean, as we continue to expand your gaming horizon here, your single player gaming horizon, it'll be interesting to see if that holds true, that your taste in games is what ends up favoring
Yeah.
games where you affect the story in serious ways. I think that's totally legitimate to be like, I prefer games like that, especially story heavy games. There is something just about being along for these characters' stories and kind of watching it from this very close angle that it's just a different kind of storytelling, you know, and a different kind of game that has its pros and cons. And I think if you're going to do it this way, you have to have an extremely strong story, right?
Yeah.
It has to be very convincing. The characters have to be really engaging. And so I think they do it, but
can we somehow merge or can we go through both of these, which is like find maybe a way to
segue?
Not segue, that we can
combine.
I don't know.
Meeting of the minds.
Yeah. So I think like something that I found to be an issue is it's not clear in encounters what you can do to like get to the next to solve the encounter. Like, can I just sneak past them? Like, you're in a city, right? It's like normally when you get into an encounter, you're like, well, I better kill everybody, right? Or there's a bunch of zombies, you're not making any noise. It's like, well, if I want to figure out how to get out of this area, first I have to kill everybody, and then I'll just run around in circles until I get out. And then I want to find all the stuff because it's a survival game.
Yeah.
And so like there is not a lot of authorship in those big set pieces, right? You don't get to, and like I don't know if I necessarily need the story to respond, but like in terms of gameplay, I wish I knew like, okay, I just need to get to this exit. And if I get there, I've beaten it. Maybe I kill some people, maybe I don't. Maybe I sneak past them. Maybe I, shoot an arrow to distract people, throw bricks. You kind of feel lost in a lot of these encounters. Or if you're not just like, I'm just gonna, nuke this entire area until it's, H-bomb, no life left, and then I'll just pick the bones. And yeah, there's if you had some of that, I feel like the gameplay would be a little bit more dynamic, and also you would feel like a little bit more in control, even if Ellie afterwards is like, oh, that was close or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I do. I'm interested in that. And like you said, Danny, I'm still like a noob in the single player game, especially the storytelling type of game, or I also don't know if I'm going to like those games. Maybe I'll actually find it really annoying and it's like overwhelming or something. But it was something that I thought of for the first time during this game, because there's just these long, boring parts that we keep dwelling on, and maybe we should move on. But like long parts where I'm just holding forward for like so long, following someone. Yeah. And, I'm just like, what the hell is this? Like, can't this just be a beautiful cutscene? Can't this be interspliced with me not in control like the opening? Like, I loved being in the backseat of the car in the opening and just having the ability to look around like you're a child in the backseat. Like, it felt not only real, but it was so cool and unique. And I was just like, the story's happening and I'm part of it and I'm taking it in, and action and all of that stuff is all at once, like reality, versus like, okay, I have to hold forward. They stop talking. Oh, I have to press triangle. Okay, hold forward, duck. I'm still holding forward. Like, I was just like,
what about the giraffe scene? So that's the
absolute chills. Absolute chills.
So the giraffe scene is like the best scene in the game, obviously. But that's one where you're playing, right? It's not a cinematic. And I think and like you're saying in the opening, when you're Sarah looking out the different car windows, like zooming in on the house that's on fire, like you feel like you're interacting in a way that's either like that, you're basically just sitting in the back of a car, but also the giraffe scene, you're doing the thing of the game. You're running after Ellie. You're like trying to see what's going on. You're a little worried about her. And then this beautiful scene unfolds, and it's you're experiencing it, not like you're not watching it happen. And there's something really, they nail it there. And I think what we're touching on in a lot of different ways is like they do it well in some moments. It's just not always. Some of the cinematics are amazing. Some of these moments are amazing, but a lot of times it's just like fat. You're saying like trim it down.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk slow behind this person for a while.
Right.
So maybe this is a good time to, unless you have something that direct to say to that, but maybe we can talk a little bit about combat.
The combat itself, yeah. I mean, we mentioned that it's not so strong. It's really like a stealth game more than like an action game to me in a lot of ways, because you know, so it's sort of survivally, it's sort of stealthy, it's sort of actiony all at once, but the survival aspect of it is just very few resources. You have very low ammo all the time. You usually don't have more than like one med kit, like and you just your melee weapons run out of durability and stuff like that, and you run out of shivs and stuff like that. But I think the stealth stuff felt the best of all the combat. Like whenever I was like accidentally in a gun battle, I was just like, oh god, like I'm just like holding aim down sights, waiting for him to like stand up, and then I blow his head off. Like, this is so dumb. But some of the stealth parts are actually when you feel the most in the game and scared and like thinking how would they be thinking and trying to like move around them strategically, and it's all very like fast and happens live, and I thought those were the best parts of the combat, basically.
Yeah, I think this is somewhere that a higher difficulty really has an effect. Teddy has always talked about, I forgot which two difficulties it is, maybe it's normal and hard, or hard and survivor, where just as you turn the difficulty down, your supply level goes way up. So you always have ammo for a fight. Whereas playing on survivor, and especially on grounded, all the time you're going into a fight with 4 bullets across all your guns. And it forces you to really lean on those stealth mechanics. Or to choose like, okay, this fight, this is a fight where I just really need to, I have 2 shotgun shells, I'm going to have to use them, you know, and I have to kill someone with it. And I think that pressure creates a really engaging gameplay experience. And I love that. And it's like, okay, I have to stealth at least 2 of these guys in this area. It's like, then I can shoot a couple, but you know, I have to at least make a little bit of progress.
Yeah, like I gotta shiv those 2.
Yeah.
And then that fucker's gonna see me. You know, and then it's gonna all hell's gonna break out.
Yeah.
I do love that feeling of like, I've already killed 2 guys stealthily. Their bodies are hidden. Like, okay, now I can be a little bit more bold. Like now I can take some risks. Like, let's see what I can do. Like, I'm ready for this to open up into a firefight, but I'm still going to try and stealth, versus like, you know, like that kind of like middle ground where you're transitioning into like, I've made a bunch of progress already stealthily in this combat.
I think
I've culled the herd.
Yeah. Like, I think that's actually the best part of it all, which is that all strategies work in the fight scenes, and you get to choose how to do it based on what you have, but also just based on how patient you want to be and what you're in the mood for. You can probably play this game by almost never shooting a gun. If you're just patient and good enough at being stealth, you can just choke every human, shiv every clicker, and like basically you're good to go, except for the really big guys and the like sniper scene or whatever. And I love that. And you can also like, there were some parts where I just like sprinted through and like jumped over a couple things, like lost aggro with the majority of the zombies, like killed a few other zombies that were chasing my ass, and like that was good. And I was like, whew, yeah, fuck them. Like, got through that part like real quick.
Resetting the stealth is a cool feature of this game.
Yes.
Most games, it's like once you're spotted, it's like Metal Gear, right? But but pretty much any stealth game, right? Now it's live. But in this, you can like pretty quickly lose line of sight, and then they're kind of back. They're still on guard, but they don't know where you are, right?
Yeah.
It's neat to be able to dip back in.
in my notes, I have this funny part. So you're always accompanied by someone, like Ellie, usually for the majority of the game. Ellie's the girl you're protecting. And one of my notes while I was playing is, I just held my breath sneaking by 6 clickers, 3 bloaters, and 5 or so runners. And then Ellie screams, "Look out below!" But like they don't hear Ellie or see Ellie, which is a really weird, silly, kind of clunky thing that, you know, maybe more modern games get right. But like, I didn't know that, and I was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" But yeah, like there's all this, like I'm quiet, and like Bill and Ellie are like literally fucking yelling, and like when you shiv a clicker, which is like the stealth way of killing a clicker, they like fucking scream so loud, and it's everything's so loud, and then you're like back in stealth. It's like there's got to be a more elegant way to have done this without sound, you know?
Yeah, I've always felt strange about Ellie's immortality in the game, and her like she can affect the combat, but also she can't get spotted. She doesn't make noise, and she can't die. It's a weird.
Can she not die?
She can get, if she gets grabbed, she can die, but she like doesn't take. She doesn't have a health bar.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably just insanely difficult to design a game where you have a follower that is a kid that like doesn't just end up costing you a ton of time because you lose all the time because they're dying or getting spotted. But yeah, I agree. It's definitely not perfect.
Yeah, I'm happy to be like, this is a conceit of it being a game.
Right.
Apparently, when they were developing it, she could initially reveal they could spot you or her, and they found that players hated Ellie.
Right.
As a result.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. There. So I was watching Derek play last night. I said I was watching my friend play, and when you're like going to get Robert with Tess, you know, it's like the very beginning of the game. Like there was this one part where Derek was like stealthing around everywhere, and he's like, "Where's Tess? Did she like bail?" And I was like, "I don't know. Do the hearing thing. Like you'll be able to see her through the wall." And he saw her, and just literally standing right next to her was one of Robert's men. Like she was against the wall with her gun, and standing like just staring at a bookshelf into the wall was one of the men. He was like, "What the fuck is this?" I was like, "Just go with it. You know? just play. It's cool.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it." Yeah.
It's not supposed to be immersive. Come on.
I think one thing that I'll just like note here is that the combat is a lot better when there's a reason to be doing it. Like I think when you are fighting David, like in Winter, when you're fighting David's people, or when you're fighting the Fireflies, or when you're even, I think actually the best one is like in Pittsburgh. These like people are monsters.
Yeah.
And you're going around like when they first stop you at that traffic, that like the highway trap, and you're fighting them, like that combat feels like so much more satisfying because you're like, fuck these people, versus like just generic combat, like going to get Robert. Like it just, that doesn't, there's something about the brutality of it, the choking, the shivving, the shooting, where you're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna fuck these guys up.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to save Ellie, and like, you know, I'll torture these people. Like I'll do, you know, it's like, I'll just fucking kill everybody. And it makes the generic boring combat, like the story, right? The characterization, the plot, whatever you want to call it, really, they accentuate the gameplay. They change the tone of it in a way that makes it more satisfying. And so why I think killing zombies never really is fun or exciting, because they're brainless obstacles.
I was actually going to ask you guys about that, because I have in my notes, are zombies the worst part of this game?
I mean, I think with most things, sorry, were you saying something, Danny?
No.
I just think with most zombie movies, the interesting parts are people, right? It's the apocalypse, what it does to society, and then it's what happens to like the other people in the world that you interact with. Do
That's
people
true.
lose their humanity or not? And that's what we see. Like you can distill a lot of philosophical problems, like, oh, what do you do when you encounter a stranger when there's no laws and police? Like, the end of the climax of this game, right, is a simple ethical problem that is distilled down. Like, do you kill one person to save humanity because of the zombie epidemic, right? These questions are easily presented in a zombie situation. So yes, I think the zombies are bad and stupid, but they allow for these kinds of things. So
that's very well said. And I think I remember I sent an email to one of my humanities teachers in high school, when after I played through the section with Henry and Sam, and the conversation that Sam and Ellie have after Sam's been, you don't know, but Sam's been bitten. And there's just like a lot of, it's a very easy backdrop for engaging with like, what does it mean to be human, and like understanding your own humanity. And it was a perfect scene to talk to my humanities teacher about.
Love it.
Yeah, I think that conversation when I played this game was like one of those standout moments.
Okay. First of all, we're a team now. Okay, we're gonna help each other out. And second, they might still look like people, but that person is not in there anymore.
Henry says that they've moved on, that they're with their families, like in heaven. Do you think that's true?
I go back and forth. I mean, I'd like to believe it.
But you don't.
I guess not.
Yeah. Me neither.
You know, it's just kind of like, you know, it's these people who are like, you know, hopeful, but still dealing with the reality that they accept, right? It's, I don't know, there's something like tragic, but also like endearing about both these characters and real. And
I feel sick just thinking about that sequence. Oh my God.
When Ellie says like, oh my God, that voice actor is incredible, but like that's so the end of that scene is like Ellie just being like, just all this hope and potential just evaporating in like, I don't know, 20 seconds.
There's a lot of like despair in this game.
Yeah.
That's the general mood of humanity, basically, is like pessimistic and like we've given up and this is it. And like, you know, and I love that. I think that's like probably one of the things that made it stand out at the time, that most games I think don't go there. Most games that I know of like don't really go there. There's usually like an obvious bad guy or boss and like you're obviously good, and you know, it's like they that's like often a place where probably games differ the most from like books and movies and stuff, is that like there is not that much character depth in games, but this game like really does do it in all those ways.
You don't join the Fireflies. Like that to me is like such a huge accomplishment for a video game, to be like, you don't join the rebels fighting against the military dictators. Like for me, I was like, oh, I'm going to join the Fireflies, obviously. And that's just not the story this game tells, right? You're not like the Rebel Alliance in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's interesting. It's like still has like the structure of a very human story, or just like a well-trodden story of things being bad and some group of people or some number of people deciding that it is worth it to try to do something good or do something that might help. And so it's not, that still manages to be this like this resonant story without relying on a good versus evil trope. And the moral ambiguity only grows. Well, I don't know if it only grows, but it allows for so much moral ambiguity throughout the game, but without making the game feel kind of aimless. It's like interesting to have these people who are ostensibly pursuing a vaccine to save humanity, facing these constant dilemmas all the way through.
Yeah, it makes me think of Nate's question a little bit, what we're talking about, which was basically like the classic zombie movie, your loved one got bit and now is going to die. Everything about the movie, I think, is very like classic post-apocalyptic zombie, you know, pandemic type of movie. But he was saying that everything still felt super intense to him, like the big emotional story moments, Sarah's death, Tess's death, other stuff that we've probably touched on. But I'm just curious, like, I mean, it sounds like we all thought that those were still really effective, but I'm more curious about the end of his question, which he said, I found the game super effective at building empathy for the characters to a level I'm not used to in games. And it's weird to say that like a story is simultaneously like generic for the genre, but can also be super effective at building empathy for the characters. You know what I mean? I don't like get how those clash, but I agree that those moments were big, you know?
I just think this is always true. If you write good characters, good dialogue, you can tell a story that's been told 1,000 times, right? I just really think it's the characters are different, right? They're not quite like Tess and Joel not kissing goodbye in the last scene, right? Sarah not saying anything when she dies. They're just like they lean on tropes, but they don't like fully embrace it. They don't wallow in it, right? It's just Tess doesn't say I love you. She just says like, isn't there something here that you owe this to me? Go, right? Like, it's you know what's going on. They don't have to lay it on too thick. So yes, your loved one got bit, the generic trope, but it's done really tastefully. It's like also. It's a trope because these things happen, right? Like you know, right?
You
it's
lose
just like
loved ones.
Yeah, right. And so it can't be. It can be effective, right? It's something we're all. It's like being like, isn't death a trope in movies? Right. It's like, yeah, we're like, yes, and it can be done really cheesily. Love can be done really cheesily, or it can be, you know, it can wreck you. And
that's a good way. You did a good job there. Nice job by you.
I hope you're happy. I hope you're happy, Nate.
Well, it's like I mean, I think about Game of Thrones, right? This fantasy story that enthralled so many people, despite being about like, I don't know, lame stuff. And I still think that it succeeded because of its characters, right? And even like the subversion of audience expectation, I think had less to do with it. At least it had less to do with its grander appeal than I think people attribute. I think a lot of times people focus on that aspect of the show and the books, but I really think it's these extremely engaging characters.
I think you guys are onto something there. One of the things I mentioned at the beginning that I did want to touch on was just like storytelling genres, or not genres, like mediums. Like why isn't this a movie? What does making this a game instead of a movie or a book offer to a story that the others don't? Is it more immersive? Do we care about immersion? That was something that I also just found myself asking, you know?
Yeah, I think. Well, the good news is we'll get to test this out when the HBO series comes out. We need a randomized double-blind placebo test with people who haven't played the game to really get to the nitty-gritty.
Yes.
But I don't know, and this might just be because I was a kid at the time, but when I think about Kingdom Hearts, I really I subbed myself in for Sora for so much of it, and when I think about my experience with that game, it like really felt like I was a part of these stories, these Disney stories. And it's very strange like watching Disney movies now that were in Kingdom Hearts, because I like remember being a part of it, you know, or like influencing the story somehow. And I do think, I never feel that way watching with any movie that I've ever seen. So I do think games can be designed in a way that it really, you become attached to the story. Like you feel like you're a part of it in some way. This game, it maybe is a little more linear, or is so linear that it undermines that a little bit. But I don't know, there's something about being in the game. Well, that's almost like reading a book. So I guess if you put it simply, it's like when you read Harry Potter, you are at school for the year with them, right? Each book, you see the major events, but you also like see the day to day, the moment to moment, kind of some of the mundane and all the glums and glows, you know. And
well,
yeah.
So I think there are a few axes. So like what you're talking about in Harry Potter is time, right? I think like what you're able to do there is you're able to spend so much time with the mundane because it's a book and you're spending a lot of time there. Like I think Alfred Hitchcock said the length of a movie should directly correlate to the size of a human bladder. And
God damn, that's good.
And it might be apocryphal, but it's great, right? And it like I don't know why, but movies are generally this length, right? And I guess now, you know, movies are getting a little longer. You know, all these Marvel movies are 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Terrible.
I mean, and it's funny actually, because like good movies I think can be really long, but unfortunately there's all these shitty movies that are really long. But with a TV show, I think you're also able to do this, right? You're also able to stretch it out, deal with the mundane. Like this is why, you know, like The Wire or The Sopranos is so good, is because it's like it's full of all these inconsequential moments that you can spend a lot of time, you know, feeding to the audience. Something like that a book does is like you can hear the internal thoughts of all the characters, right? It's like not something you can do it with voiceover in movies, but it's usually like really awkward and usually doesn't work.
Or Peep Show, shout out to Peep Show, but
yeah, okay. Yeah, I was gonna. Have you seen Adaptation?
Yeah, but a while ago.
Okay. There's like a famous film writer who they reference in the movie, like screenwriter who runs all these like workshops and stuff for how to be a better movie writer. And one of his things is like, whatever you do not put voiceover in your movie. And they talk about him a lot in the movie, and he's a character in the movie, but also the movie is full of the main character's voiceover narration. And actually the guy who does the workshops and stuff, the screenwriter, after the movie came out was like, there are some situations where voiceover's okay. Like I've amended it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Adaptation is one of them.
Yeah, that's an amazing movie. But right, so it's like, what does, and the question is again, like what do games now do for this story? Like we're gonna see, like, you know, the show will still have like, okay, we can spend a lot of time in this world. But I think one thing that the game does is this is a world that's unlike ours, right? So it's not like you're walking down the street of New York City and it's day to day. It's you're kind of like, it's kind of like an alien world in some ways, and you might want to spend more time in certain areas. You get to be the author of those experiences, and you get to go like, oh, I'm going to walk through this bus. I'm going to walk through this military checkpoint, and like, I'm going to spend time here looking at the details of this game. Because something we talk about is how dense some of these set pieces are, the set designs. And you're able to spend a lot of time, if you want, actually absorbing some of the story, the world building. And if you don't want to, you don't have to, I guess. And you can just play it more like a movie or a game. But, well, maybe even less like a game, more like a movie. And if you guys want to jump in here, but I think like the collectibles are some of this, like the strength of it as a game. So I think like the Ish storyline, which is the storyline you in the sewers, like after you find the crashed boat on the beach, there's like you find a note of this like boat captain who like survived for years out on the ocean, and then he ran out of fuel, so he comes back to the world, and he's like, oh my God, it's like totally gone to shit. Like it's insane. Then he starts, he like gets these people to come live with him underground. They have all these like chalkboards where they're teaching kids how to write. They have all these traps set up that you like encounter. And this could all be told to you in film, but you're kind of like putting it together yourself, right? You're kind of like, you're sort of like an archaeologist, and it feels really empowering. Like you are uncovering this story in a really, to me, it felt empowering. Like, oh my God, I'm learning about all this in a way that like, if it was happening in a cinematic, it would be like maybe interesting, but this was like, oh, I came across some ancient writings or something. Like I'm coming across all these corpses and I'm piecing together this situation. And those moments of the game like are I think so. I think that's one of the strongest parts of the game. And I think I said this in the chat because this has to do with Shane and TLF's question. But yeah, like this is like I found like I wanted to find notes in this area, especially regarding this story, more than I wanted to find any supply, any gears to upgrade your gun. I was like if I found a note that told me more about this area, I was like, fuck yeah, like this is awesome. And right, it's like it's that tension here we're still talking about. It's like it's gamey, but it's also this world building story. And it's like, I don't care about like these things that are going to make my gameplay experience easier. I care more about like reading about story items in this section.
Yeah,
and
I have like light bulbs going off right now because I think you are nailing it. I'm a little bit upset because I didn't really read any of the notes. I read like 5 and I was like, whatever, this is worthless, and I just moved on. But
they're bad in the beginning. They're bad in the beginning.
Many of them are bad.
Yeah,
no question.
So that turned me off, and I was like, oh, and they're bad, and you don't have to read them to like learn anything. So why would I ever read these? But I think you're actually onto something there, where that is the only thing that games can do that the other things maybe can't do. Because just to go back to the giraffe moment. So, well, actually, even before the draft moment, like one of my notes, I mentioned already how I think it's stupid that you have to follow the character while they talk to you and press triangle for them to talk. One of my notes is, why am I the DP? Like, why am I DPing this movie? Because this should just be a cinematic, and they should be showing it to me, you know? And then when you watch a movie, you're the camera, you're not the characters. So you see what it wants you to see. What's magical about the giraffe part is you get up to this area and then you see, like, you just barely see the shadow of a giraffe's head, but you see it. The camera didn't see it for you. And you're like, what the fuck was that? And then you making the discovery, like you were saying with like finding the notes and stuff, I think that sensation of magic and like discovery and wonderment of your own is something that maybe that's the thing that games can do better than other things can do. Because yeah, I mean, yeah, that's just what I was thinking when you were saying that.
Yeah, I feel like the word authorship keeps coming into my head, right? It's like you created this experience. I mean, obviously the game did, but like it feels like it.
It
right?
feels like it because you could have been looking somewhere else or gone a different way or something. It's not like, you know, a movie sometimes will very obviously foreshadow what's going to happen because it just shows you like the house or whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, I know what's going to happen now.
Wow, that was beautiful.
That was great. We're
All
having
right,
a,
that's
having
a
a
wrap.
great time.
Yeah.
Oh my god, so much action.
Yeah.
What? Go ahead, Teddy.
I was gonna say, do we want to talk about some like plot points?
Oh my god, dude! I was literally just gonna say that.
Love
Okay.
that.
I guess I was just gonna say like maybe we can talk about some of the best moments. I don't know if that's what you meant by plot points, but
Sure, they overlap. I'm sure.
what did you imagine, Teddy?
Yeah. What did I imagine to say? What did I mean?
For the plot
Yeah.
points? Yeah.
I think
you just want to kind of dissect them a bit.
No, I think there's so many great moments here. I kind of wanted to dive into the ending, but I think we can maybe talk about a few plot points first. So yeah, is there something like that stuck out to you guys as like being awesome, or?
You go, Danny. I feel like you have this more dialed in than I do.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the opening. We talked about Tess. We didn't talk much about Billstown. I guess it isn't really a great plot point there. Henry and Sam.
Yeah, that's good.
Is a really beautiful and like horrifying. I was like getting emotional just when we were talking about it. I think that, I mean, winter for me is where most of it really happens. And the backdrop, Alon's backdrop here, like and this is actually something that like, I feel like they kind of did better than they did with the entire, like what this one section in winter is is like the thrust of The Last of Us Part 2, almost done like more neatly and tighter, and like gets a similar message across in a much shorter
2
time.
hours.
But yeah.
So what I love about this section and the later sections of the game is you pretty quickly start to find out that Joel is bad, right? And there are a few moments where the game kind of like teases this, where when after the highway stop, Joel's like, I've been on both sides, right? And Ellie's like, have you killed people?
Oh,
and he's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
And she's like, innocent people? He's like, let's talk about something else or something like that. And then when you meet Tommy and he's like, I kept us alive. And Tommy says like, it wasn't worth it. Like, I still can't, like, I have nightmares about what we did.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And you're just like, oh shit. And then I don't know, like when Joel is unleashed after he comes out of his injury, right? When you've awoken like the survival Joel, like you don't want to be in his way.
Yeah. Post Sarah Joel.
Yes.
That torture scene.
Yeah,
that's so insane.
There's only 2 quotes that I wrote down as my favorite quotes, but one of them is the torture scene where he makes the guy point on the map where the thing is, then kills him. And the other guy's like, he fucking told you what you wanted, whatever. And Joel's like, he's like, I'm not going to fucking tell you. And Joel's like, it's all right. I believe him. And then kills the other guy. I was like, let's fucking go.
Eli. Fuck you, man. He told you what you wanted. I ain't telling you shit.
That's all right. I believe him.
No, wait.
What was the other quote you have written down?
It's my scene. It's my backdrop. So Ellie, you're like hunting this like moose or whatever, and then you run into these dudes, and it's very threatening. At this point in the game, you think Joel's dead, and you're completely on your own. You're young Ellie. It's your first time even controlling Ellie, and it's just like, oh, the whole time I was like, I can't fucking believe I'm Ellie and Joel's dead, and like, what the fuck, you know? And you just have your arrow just pointed at this guy's fucking forehead, and everything that he says, Ellie basically answers, or I'll put one between your eyes. And then at one point in the conversation, like they're like haggling, and Ellie's just totally like just alpha dogging this guy in every way possible. And she's like, no. And he's like, or you'll put one right between my eyes. And she's like, that's right. And I was like, oh, baby. Like, let's go. Ellie's so sick.
Welcome to follow us.
I'm not following you anywhere. Buddy boy can go get it. He comes back with what I need. The deer is all yours. Anyone else shows up.
You put one right between my eyes.
That's right.
Another one that comes to mind for me is he ain't even hurt.
Yes.
The highway trap is like
so sick.
I think that's where the game really takes off, and like they're just like, that's like the first moment where you're just like, oh my God, like there's something here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting that you kind of have this like Joel is simultaneously becoming like a better, more sympathetic character and a worse person as the game goes on. like he and Ellie's relationship is better and better, but like he is almost collapsing like into a more like neurotic person. I don't know. He's like, and it culminates with him just totally losing any sense of selflessness or obligation to other people and humanity, right? But it's just he just turns more and more into this like broken man who has done terrible things and whose daughter died, right? Like whose daughter died in his arms, and he just becomes he devolves more and more into just that.
Joel's like arc, I guess you would call it, is basically like completely broken man at the opening. The worst possible thing that could happen to anyone. 20 years later, he's just this like the coldest dude ever who just does what needs to get done and just, you know, whatever. People's lives don't matter, nothing matters. It's just him and Tess against the world. And like his arc is basically like Ellie breaking through those walls that he has up to return him to the man that like once loved his daughter, but that also making him crazy and like making him psychotic to never lose his daughter again, which basically just turns into Ellie. And it's just like so well done.
Right. He doesn't change, right? He comes back to the person he was at the beginning, right?
With the trauma.
Right.
Like,
right. He's like a full circle, but you're damaged at the end, right?
Dash of trauma in the mix. Yeah.
Well, and like I pointed out at the beginning, Joel was like brutal and cold then, right? He leaves that family to die.
True.
So yeah, some of that's still
that's
it's like
a good point.
he's already like that, and he, you know, will do anything to avoid that trauma again, right? Should we talk about the ending?
Yeah, tell us about it.
Should I say what happens or just tell you how I feel?
What happens?
Yeah,
I forgot.
No one's listening anymore anyway. We're an hour and a half in or whatever.
Yeah, I'll just refresh your memories. But you've made it. You've been trying to get Ellie to the Firefly like main medical center. You finally get there, and you get knocked unconscious. You and Ellie basically get knocked unconscious, and you wake up in the hospital talking to Marlene. You find out that Ellie will have to die for them to reverse engineer a vaccine from the fungus growing in her brain. And Joel just goes on a killing spree and kills every Firefly in the building, including Marlene, to save Ellie from the surgery. And
he doesn't. Also, I think an important note is he doesn't kill Marlene to get to Ellie. He kills Marlene to prevent her from possibly coming after Ellie later, right? He kills her in cold blood just to be safe, right? He is, and I think something like the torture scene reveals, but also when he's torturing the Firefly, and also when he kills Marlene, is he is so effective at being this person.
Yeah,
right? He is clinical at these things, and it's just like he's such a good villain in this regard. I don't know if you guys think he is the villain of the game. If that even matters. Greg often, when I remember playing this, and he was like, Joel's the villain of this game.
Wow.
But I think this is what good villains are, right? They have good motivations or empathetic motivations, but have bad things happen, do very bad things as a result. And yeah, like it's not like he just has to kill some people who are standing in his way. He goes above and beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, he is the villain of this world at the conclusion of this game, clearly.
He's the villain of humanity, yeah.
But yeah, he doesn't, I don't know, every time I've played it, he doesn't, no matter how much I've thought about it, it just doesn't feel like the villain when you do it. I mean, I feel very conflicted as I'm killing all the Fireflies. But yeah, I'd never, I don't know. I guess that's how well written it is that you just can't help but empathize with this like broken person.
Yeah, I'm with you, Danny. I never really felt like he was the villain. I didn't think he was making the ethical choice, but I think part of it is also I understood his choice.
Right.
Not that I'm a parent, but I'm sure my parents would do the same for me. You know, like that. There's irrationality is part of like love, and like that's just what kicked in, and I'm like, that's what we're doing, you know. And at that point, Ellie means a lot to me as well as, you know, and like I said, I didn't agree with it, but I understood it, and I think that's why I don't think he's the villain. And if I was gonna pick a villain, I'd almost be like, the fact that he has to make the choice is the villain. Like, you know what I mean? Like humanity being this like torturous that he has to choose between his like second daughter dying or, you know, potentially saving the world. We don't even know if it would work. Is just like, that's like the evil thing to me, not Joel. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think we talked about this recently, but I heard Rob Zachney on the Waypoint, the Vice podcast, talking about this, and he was, so this I'm stealing this from him. He was like, Joel has seen what like the greater good argument does. In fact, like Sarah's death, his daughter's death, is because of like a military quarantine, where the argument is like, it's for the greater good. We have to kill these people on the edge of the zombie outbreak, because in order to do that, it will save a bunch of people. And like, look what happened, right? Like, it didn't work. His daughter was murdered. All these like the military who are enforcing all these horrible rules for the greater good causes all this suffering. And when he's talking to Marlene, he's like, keep telling yourself all this bullshit. Right? Like, you can tell yourself like you're doing it to like save people, and this is a hard decision for you, but like it's all this delusion that you can control this, and that, you know, like I didn't think this. I thought the game was like basically presenting a clear ethical choice, like do we cure humanity or save one person? But we don't. It's very possible, right? And if there's room for doubt, it wouldn't work, and we're just going to kill this innocent person again, or after many people have been killed, because people think they know how the world works and how to fix it. And he's like, no, I'm done with that. Like, I'm getting her out of here. You guys are just another fucking, you know, like delusional leader. I'm like, we're going to live our lives.
You're the same as the military that put me in the hell that I've been in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
That's another like layer of why you understand where he's coming from, right? It's like, they're saying we want to do it for the good of the people, and he's saying, I know the good, and it's Ellie, and that's the only good, and like, I'm gonna actually save the only good. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's so fucking well done.
It's so I don't know of any movie or book or anything that has had a better ending. I really don't.
I understand. Some people love the sequel. Some people hate the sequel. Shout out to Ian. I just like wish there wasn't even one. I just think it ends perfectly, and it's great and stands alone, and just like make a different game, because you guys did a great job. But I understand, you know, capitalism, and they probably sold twice as many copies of the sequel than they did the first one, so, you know, fuck me. But I don't know, when I heard the sequel's like 35 hours long, I was like, not sure I'm gonna be playing that one. Like, I'm just gonna keep the story where it is.
Yeah, I think they overestimated how interesting the world they had created was. But yeah, I mean, and the other part of the ending is this final moment between Joel and Ellie as they're getting on their way back to Jackson, right? As they're like going back to, well, and Ellie, we should also remember that Ellie is unconscious from when you get to the Fireflies to then after you've left.
She's getting prepped for surgery.
So she has this, for her, this like deeply unsatisfying resolution to their journey. And it's like she is, it's just like overnight. She's gone from like hopeful that they're going to find this group that she is so fond of. She loves the Fireflies and loved them when she was in the quarantine zone. And
she's going to save humanity, right?
Yeah.
Right.
She's the savior.
To go from that to then being like, oh, you're not going to save humanity anymore. Sorry.
And you're not going to get to talk to a single person. Marlene wasn't there. Don't worry. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, and she, I mean,
well, no, you say what happens though.
Yeah.
I think you're the cliffhanger for the listeners right now is so brutal. Like, say what happens.
And I mean, Ellie knows that something is not adding up, and you know, you can't. I don't think she would ever dare infer what Joel actually did, but she says they're just walking, and Joel is actually talking about his daughter with her, and he's like full delusion, you know, and she says, "Swear to me that everything you told me about the Fireflies is true."
Because he says that they couldn't cure it. What does he say? He's
There's like
it
tons of
didn't
people
work.
like you. They've already tried.
Yeah, and it hasn't been working.
They've stopped looking for a cure. And so she tells him to swear to her that everything he said about it is true. And he swears. He waits a while and then he swears.
And she's just like, okay.
You keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
And that's the literal black screen. That's the end of the game. And you're just like, oh. It's so good. It's so good.
Right. And to me, this is Joel's last sacrifice for her, right? It's him being like, I have nothing, sort of like, I'm going to lie to you, someone I really care about so deeply and totally, so that you can live a without this hanging over you.
Right.
And it's like, it's sort of, it's like oddly not selfish in a weird way. It's like, it's not like him lying to protect himself. He's like lying to protect her.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue if he should be or not should be, but that's his intent.
Right.
Is not selfish. His intent is purely protecting the person I've sworn to protect, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing ending. It's like you said, Danny, I think it's pretty unique in that.
Yeah.
It's not easy to write a moment like that and not have it be an unsatisfying and not have it be an unsatisfying ending. Like, I don't know how they
it was
how they managed to do
satisfying. It felt real. It didn't feel cheesy. I feel like all of those like mines were somehow dodged by probably all of the other good stuff that we said, but it's sort of like subconscious when they're character building and stuff. But like, yeah, I mean, I could imagine that being so poorly done and just being like a cheesy ending or just being like not believable at all or, you know, whatever. But it just like hit every note so well. The druck.
The druck. Yeah. Dude, the
dumps
other
like a druck.
The other amazing part for me is the fight with David.
Oh yeah.
Is another absolute highlight where you're fighting in the burning diner.
Oh my god!
And then that cutscene.
That's like one of the only
incredible
like boss fights. Mm-hmm. Like that one was like a fucking like true like video game boss fight, and it's so sick.
Yeah.
I have like a permanent chill in like the back left of my head right now from this conversation. Oh my god! Like I just keep getting chills thinking about the game. This part in particular. Yeah.
Well, how does the cutscene go? Can you guys remind me after you kill David?
Well,
Ellie's literally chopping him.
Yeah, and then Joel walks in, right,
and grabs her. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
He's
my
like,
god!
Don't touch me, and he says. Ellie says he made me, or he tried to, and Joel's like, "Come here, baby girl."
Yeah,
and calls her baby girl, and it's like this like they just turned it all up to 11, but it's not like it's not cheesy, right? Like it is full, like Joel's torturing people to get to Ellie. Ellie's fully formed as this, like, she can stand up for herself. Like, she just fucking killed this cannibal pedophile.
Yeah.
And also Joel loves her. And like all of it happens and it's natural and clean and it's just it's just masterful.
Stop!
Fucking touch me!
Okay, it's me. Look. It's me.
He tried to...
Oh, baby girl. It's okay.
Joel.
The reason I wanted to start with the opening again is because I think the opening is the first part that they do this. The first part where they nail everything all at once. Where it's a movie, but you're playing, and it's action, but it's sad, and it's character building, and it's dialogue, all in one sequence, and everything's perfect and tight and amazing. And then, like, we talked, there's, like, a lull, and there's, like, a lot of, like, clunky, annoying shit, but once you get to the final third or whatever of the game, it's back to being, like, that quality of the opening, where I don't feel like anything's filler, I don't feel like they're wasting my time, I feel like everything is building everything. The world is constantly being built. The characters are constantly being developed and built. The dialogue's all good. Like the cutscenes are all good. And it just like, yeah, it just gets so good. It's upsetting that we have friends that hate it so much that they can't possibly play the rest of it. But I also kind of get it. Like whatever. It's okay to not like the things, you know?
I don't get how much they hate it, honestly. But I do get that they don't want to play it. That I can accept.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take that.
What do we? How do you and Teddy? Because we kind of went through it when it happened. How do you feel about like the critical conversation about the game? How do you feel about it being the best game of all time? Do you think it is? Do you think it is in the conversation at least? Do you have any feelings about what puts it there and what holds it back?
Me?
Anyone.
Teddy, you go. That's a Teddy question.
Yeah, I just think like it's not even on my radar for one of the best games ever made. It is. Wow. I think it is an amazing story. I think it is an amazing experience. There's so much about it I love. But I just I think I said, like, is Gladiator one of the best movies ever? Like, is something that, like, is Braveheart one of the best movies ever? Like, Braveheart is a movie to me that is, like, super emotional. Like, I'll cry. I cried, like, when I saw it. I'll probably cry again when I see it. But it is, like, it is generic. And even though it is well done and they understand how to tell a story, it's, like, not, I don't know, it's just not one of the best. Like, this, like, the game's full of crouch behind cover and stealth strangulation mechanics. Like I can't consider it. I still think this is a game. Like I don't want to be like, this is a interactive movie. Like I think this is a video game. It's like very,
me too.
Yeah. And it's a very well done video game, but it's just too generic to be one of the greatest of all time. That's my opinion.
The thing that I want to tack on to what you're saying, because I agree, is also that like that's still good. Like that, it sounds. There are a lot of people who are completely obsessed with this game. I'm friends with some of them. They would take that as like an assault of the game. You know, like you're disrespecting, you don't get it, you're a fucking straight white male. This does so many other things for games that you can't even possibly understand. We all like it. I really liked it. You really liked it. Danny really likes it. But like, not everything that I really like is, I'm not that kind of person. I don't only like the most like fucking, what's the word I'm looking for? The most like highbrow shit. You know, like my favorite movies include like Die Hard, you know, but would I say like it's the best movie of all time? Like I'd probably hesitate, even though it's one of my favorite movies, you know, so I just wanted to make that distinction clear that like we all really, really like it. We just spent like an hour and a half talking about mostly really good things about the game, but yeah, I'm with you. I think for a story game, for like a game that's trying to do what it does, which is I think something you said, Teddy, you know, a couple weeks ago when we were talking about it. For a game that's trying to do what it does it like to the peak levels. The art and the dialogue and the cinematics and the story and the voice acting, like all this shit that we've talked about, peak, like best of what it could be. But what it could be is not the best of all time games. Is really, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, this is, the more I've come back to the game, the less I've felt it is the best game of all time. I definitely did. After the first time I played it, I was just so enthralled with the story and how much I felt playing the game that I put it in at the top of my list every time someone would ask. I think especially, honestly, since we started this podcast, I have been paying a lot more attention to gameplay and game design. And yeah, I think you can't be the greatest game of all time and have this generic of gameplay and have cover look the way it does. And yeah, quick
time events.
Right.
Yeah, like the Half-Life 2 puzzles, right? A game that came out, 15 years before this game, are like all unique. And all like that, like I talked about earlier, like the magic of like self-discovery or whatever that you kind of led me to, Teddy, is like every puzzle moment in Half-Life 2 is pretty much that. It's like I have to figure out a new way to get through this totally new system using what I know. Every fucking puzzle in this game is either a ladder, a dumpster, or a pallet. That's the three. And they just like literally, it felt like they just went through the script and were like, okay, pallet here, dumpster here, ladder here, plank here. Ladder, let's double dumpster. Like, let's, you know, it's double just like, dumpster. what is this? Like, why am I with you? That just that can't be the best of all time. I'm sorry.
And especially fresh off of Metal Gear Solid, which has so many innovative player game interactions.
Right.
I was thinking about it while playing that, or I was thinking about this while playing this. I was reflecting on Metal Gear Solid, and I was thinking this game doesn't have anything that is close to some of those.
Or I've been thinking about like I compare all these games to the games we played before, but like Doom as well, right? Like just the combat loop of that game, just being like, this is a shooter. Like they did it, right?
Yeah.
And like to me, it's like the story of Doom is like a fucking absolute garbage, right?
Yeah, it's
like the opposite.
Right.
It's like the anti.
Yes, and to me, it's like to even like how bad the Doom story is, I'd be like, this is a better game than The Last of Us.
Right.
And like there is something, because it's a game, right? They're both games, like, and they're both good games, but. I do want, one honorable mention is, despite how much we hate the ladders and the moving the dumpsters, when you go over to give Ellie a boost up to that ledge and she doesn't show up because she's bummed out about just like
fireflies.
The fireflies, and she like, you go to boost her and then like you look off, you're like, where's Ellie? Like that, it like almost made all of it worth it. I was like,
fair enough. Yeah, I mean, maybe that was the intention the whole time.
No way,
it's like,
no way.
How do we make this moment really hit so hard? I don't know. He's just 4D chessing me, but yeah, Metal Gear Solid. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I think it was in our initial talk about The Last of Us. You said something along the lines, Danny, of like, Kojima would never allow that. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but you said those words, and it's something that stuck with me because, like I mentioned earlier, where Ellie literally screams after I just stealth through like the hardest part of the game. No aggro, clean as a fucking whistle. I just like, I'm a god. And Ellie screams, "Look out below!" Like, Kojima would never. Every zombie would get triggered. They would kill us all. Like, insta death. Like that is just like so not polished. You know, it's just like you just didn't have to do that. You know, but yeah,
yeah. I mean, I think this game did a lot for the, and will continue to do a lot for the industry and for the
Absolutely.
medium. I think that, I mean, I think that. Yeah, I guess Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us Part 2, the story isn't on the same level, but both those games, the gameplay is much improved. And I think there's like a bar has been set for everyone to aim for. It's like you can have this story. Like there's no reason this game can't have really good gameplay also, right? There is a perfect game.
Exactly.
With both of these pieces there.
Right.
And
do motion capture, have them in the same room together, right? Like interacting, acting, like you can do it.
It's so close. Yeah. That's a really good way of putting it, Danny. It's like you can have art that looks this good. You can have music that's this good. You can have voice acting that's this good. You can have a story that's this good. And it's possible to make the gameplay as good as like Doom.
Right.
In one game.
Yeah. And someone will do it.
And we're like a step along that ladder or whatever, or a rung on the ladder. So yeah.
I also just shout out to Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson for
the voice actors, right?
Yeah, just an outstanding
good job
performance.
Good job.
And Nolan North, honorable mention for playing David.
Oh yes, I always forget that. Literally every time I forget, and then I
Nolan North. Do I know who that is?
He's in a lot of stuff, but he is Drake in the Uncharted games. Is probably his biggest voice acting role.
He's Drake.
Yeah, but
David
his voice
is
is
Drake.
The rapper.
No.
Yeah. Yes. Now we've got it.
Now we got it. That's his real name. Okay. Yeah, I think we're done, guys, right?
Yeah, I think we're done.
Yeah. I just also want to say great score. The music is amazing.
The music is so good.
Yeah. Really good.
And I love lens flare. And so does Naughty Dog.
Yeah, it's composed by Gustavo Santaolalla.
Yeah.
Not sure.
I think it's Santalia.
Santalia.
Good guitar.
Yeah, he's won Academy Awards, multiple Academy Awards for movie scores and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they brought him in for this game, and he just fucking killed it.
Yeah.
Brokeback Mountain and Babel won back-to-back years best original score.
Wow, that's awesome.
Back.
That's
sit down, Hans.
Yeah, later, bitch.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
All right.
That's The Last of Us.
Yeah, it's Last of Us. As usual, we forgot to pick a game for next month, but we'll pipe it in post. Thanks, Alon. And thanks for playing.
Thanks for
Love
playing.
you guys.
Happy gaming.
Happy gaming.
Happy gaming.
For the next Game Club episode, we will be playing Mega Man X. Happy gaming.